Okay, so you know that scene you've had stuck in your head since like kindergarten?
Pilgrims in their goofy hats with the buckles sitting at a big wooden table next to Native Americans. Everybody smiling, passing the mashed potatoes, giving thanks, living their best 1621 lives?
Yeah, that's not really what happened. The story of Thanksgiving we all learned in school, it's about as accurate as saying pilgrims wore those big buckle hats, which, by the way, they never actually did. The real history is far more complex and honestly way more fascinating.
And before you navigate away thinking, oh great, another boring history lesson, hold up. Because this isn't about ruining your favorite holiday. This is about making it actually mean something.
Yeah, this is about leveling up your brain so you understand what's real instead of just what's easy. And trust me, the real story is way more interesting than the fairy tale version anyway.
We're your hosts, and you're listening to Hoot Pods, the place where big stories and brave ideas meet curious minds. Today, we're cracking open one of the most famous tales you've been told since kindergarten, and trust me, once you hear the real version, you're never going to look at those construction paper turkeys the same way again.
So let's rewind way back. Before the Mayflower, before the Pilgrims, before any of that, picture a kid about your age living in a village called Patuxet, right on the coast of what we now call Massachusetts. This kid's family has lived on this land for thousands of years, not hundreds. Thousands. Their great times, 100 grandparents walked these same forests, fished these same waters, grew corn in these same fields.
Then, between 1616 and 1619, something terrible happens. A sickness comes. Not like when you get a cold and miss a few days of school. This was a disease nobody had ever seen before, probably brought by European fishermen who stopped along the coast. And within 3 years, 9 out of every 10 people in the village are gone.
Can you even picture that? Look around your classroom next week. Now imagine only 2 or 3 of those kids are left. That's what happened to entire communities up and down the coast. They called it the Great Dying. And it was exactly as horrible as it sounds.
So, when the Pilgrims showed up in 1620, they didn't find some empty wilderness just waiting for them like a blank Minecraft world. They found cleared fields that somebody else had already farmed. They found stored food in underground pits. They found bones. They literally built their colony on top of a village where almost everyone had just died.
Instead of being sad about all those people who died, some of the English leaders actually celebrated. King James of England literally thanked God for sending what he called a wonderful plague to clear the land for English settlers. Bro called a disease that killed almost everyone wonderful. That's not giving thanks, that's just messed up.
Now, you might be wondering, wait, if the Native Americans had just been through all that, why would they help the Pilgrims at all? Why teach them how to grow corn and catch fish and survive the winter? Why not just tell these strangers to get lost?
Great question. And the answer isn't what you might think. See, there was this leader named Massasoit. He was the sachem, kind of like a chief, of the Wampanoag people. His community had just lost almost everyone to that sickness. They were weak and vulnerable. And nearby, there was another powerful group called the Narragansett who hadn't gotten as sick. Massasoit was worried. What if the Narragansett decided to attack while his people were still recovering? His warriors couldn't defend everyone anymore. So when he saw these weird English people with their loud guns and strange clothes, he made a smart but risky decision. He thought, okay, these guys have weapons. If we become allies, maybe they'll help protect us.
So it wasn't about being best friends forever. It was survival strategy, a military deal. Massasoit was playing chess while everyone else thought it was checkers.
Exactly. And that famous feast in 1621? Here's what actually went down. The pilgrims were hunting birds and firing their muskets. Massasoit heard the gunshots and showed up with 90 warriors because he thought a battle was starting. 90 dudes. That's basically your whole grade showing up unannounced. When everyone realized it was just a harvest party and not a war, they decided to chill together for 3 days.
But here's what they definitely did not have at that meal: no turkey as the main course, at least not the way we think of it. No pumpkin pie because they had no sugar or flour to make crusts. No cranberry sauce, no mashed potatoes, because those came from South America and Europeans weren't even eating them yet.
That's right. The Wampanoag brought 5 deer. There was probably some wild birds, corn, shellfish. Some people say they might have even had eels.
Yuck.
It was more like a colonial cookout than the fancy dinner in those paintings you've seen.
And get this, they absolutely 100% did not call it Thanksgiving. To pilgrims, a Thanksgiving was a religious thing with lots of praying and sometimes fasting. This was just a harvest festival, a party to celebrate not dying that winter. The name Thanksgiving got attached to it way later.
So, if that's not where our modern holiday comes from, what is?
Oh, this is where it gets wild. Fast forward about 240 years to 1863. The United States is tearing itself apart in the Civil War. Brothers literally fighting brothers. It was the darkest, most divided time in American history. President Abraham Lincoln needed something, anything, to bring people together, to remind them they were one country. So he took an idea that a magazine editor named Sarah Josepha Hale had been pushing for decades and finally made Thanksgiving a national holiday. Lincoln basically invented the Thanksgiving we know. He picked the last Thursday in November. He said families should gather and eat and be grateful. And that old story about pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a peaceful meal, that became the feel-good origin story a broken country desperately needed. A story of cooperation to distract from all the fighting. Problem is, that simple story left out almost everything real. The plague, the survival strategy, the land that wasn't actually empty. All of it got smoothed over into a nice painting with happy people passing turkey.
Yo, now some people might say, come on, does it really matter? It was so long ago. Why bring up all this heavy stuff when we're just trying to have a nice holiday?
Honestly, that's a fair question. Let's actually think about it. Knowing the truth doesn't ruin anything. It actually makes things matter more. Think about it like this. Your friend gives you a present and you say thanks and move on. That's nice, right?
Yeah, like what if you knew your friend saved up their allowance for months, gave up buying snacks and games they wanted, and spent hours finding exactly the right gift just for you?
Now, that thanks hits different, doesn't it? The gratitude is deeper because you understand the real story behind the gift. Thanksgiving works the same way. When you know about the Wampanoag people and what they survived, when you know about Massasoit's desperate choice to ally with strangers, when you know their descendants are still here today, still fighting for their land and language and rights, your gratitude becomes something real, instead of just something you say before grabbing the rolls.
That's an excellent point. You can hold two feelings at once. That's not confusing. That's called emotional intelligence. You can feel sad about what happened in history and still feel happy to be with your family. You can acknowledge the complicated past and still find meaning in the present.
Actually being able to hold complicated feelings at the same time is like a superpower. Most adults struggle with it. If you can do it as a kid, you're already ahead.
Here's something else you should know. Every single year since 1970, Native Americans gather in Plymouth, Massachusetts on Thanksgiving Day. But they're not celebrating. They call it the National Day of Mourning. They march, some of them fast instead of feasting. They remember everyone who was lost. It started when a Wampanoag man named Frank James was invited to give a speech at the 350th anniversary of the Pilgrim's Landing. He wrote an honest speech about real history and the organizers rejected it. Said it was too controversial. They wanted him to read a nicer version they wrote instead. Frank James said no. He gathered his people near a statue of Massasoit and gave his real speech anyway. He talked about how the Pilgrims took from Wampanoag graves before they'd even been on land 4 days, how Massasoit's kindness was eventually repaid with broken promises.
Right. And we should remember that the Wampanoag are still here. That's maybe the most important thing I can tell you. They didn't disappear. They're not just characters in an old story. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes in the United States right now, today. Real people. Scientists, teachers, artists, kids just like you.
One of the worst things about the old Thanksgiving myth is it makes it seem like Native Americans only existed in the past. Like they were just helpers in someone else's story who vanished after dinner.
That's not just wrong, it's kind of insulting.
So, what can you actually do with all this? How do you take this from just information to something that changes how you show up?
Well, first, talk about it. At your Thanksgiving table, before everyone dives into the food, maybe suggest something different. Go around and say what you're thankful for.
But also, if you want, get curious about the land you're on. There are websites where you can find out which indigenous nation originally lived in your area. It's not homework, and it's not about guilt. It's just one of those cool things to know, like finding out your town used to be underwater millions of years ago or whatever.
Yeah, second, learn some names. Not just pilgrims and Indians, but real names. Massasoit. Tisquantum, who we often call Squanto. The Wampanoag, the Narragansett, the Pequot.
When you learn names, you're treating people like actual people instead of background characters.
Third, ask your parents or whoever you live with if you can support Indigenous communities somehow. Buy from a Native-owned business. Donate to organizations preserving Indigenous languages.
That's right. Did you know tons of native languages are in danger of disappearing? But there are people working hard to save them. You could be part of that.
Fourth, and this is the big one, keep asking questions. Don't just accept the easy version of any story, whether it's Thanksgiving or anything else you learn in school. Ask who wrote this version. Ask what got left out. Ask who benefits from people believing this particular story.
Yeah, that's called critical thinking, and honestly, it's like the main skill you need for everything in life.
Whoa, bro, where did you come from?
Ah, I was in the corner chowing down on some pumpkin pie.
Isn't that for dessert after Thanksgiving dinner?
Yeah, don't tell your mother. If anyone asks, the dog ate it.
What dog?
Ah, moving on. Here's my promise to you. Truth is not always comfortable. Sometimes it makes you feel weird or sad or confused. But it never makes you weaker. Never. Truth makes you stronger every single time.
So this Thanksgiving, when you're sitting with your family, eating whatever delicious food you eat, whether it's turkey or tamales or pizza, because honestly, who cares? Take a moment.
Be thankful for the people around you who love you. Be thankful for the food on your plate. Be thankful for the roof over your head and the ground beneath your feet.
But also remember that ground has a story.
And the people who lived there weren't just friendly helpers in someone else's adventure.
Right. They were the main characters of their own story. A story that's still being written right now today.
You know what's actually really cool? You get to be part of the generation that tells the whole truth, that honors both the gratitude and the grief, that celebrates family and togetherness without pretending the past didn't happen.
Right. That's not being a downer at dinner. That's being wise. That's having integrity. That's being the kind of person who makes the future better than the past.
So go forth. Eat too much pie. Except you, Dad.
Be patient with your weird relatives. Maybe watch some football if that's your thing. Hug the people who matter to you.
And when you say what you're thankful for this year, let it come from a place of real knowledge. Because gratitude that's built on truth is gratitude that actually means something.
You've got the story now, the real one.
Use it well. Happy Thanksgiving, you beautiful history detectives.
Are you going to tell your mom about the pie?